Hello, I'm still trying to figure out YouTube upload, but we'll give this a try. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, is big in our news right now, and I want to talk about some of the legal issues that I think are confusing everybody and not being terribly helpful. I think we need to get to the truth, and that is not easy under these circumstances. Um, the thing is that there's been this enormous push to release the Epstein files. Now, what are those? This would be a beginning issue because in around 2015, no, excuse me, 15 to 20 years ago, a number of young women, most of them, I guess, technically girls, but many of them 15, 16, 17 on up, um, you know, complained about their experiences with mysterious wealthy man, Jeffrey Epstein, who had an island um, in the U.S. Virgin Islands called St. James Island. The U.S. Virgin Islands is a territory of the United States. And so, very well, relatively close to Florida, and therefore is under U.S. law in most respects. In Florida, Jeffrey Epstein also had a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida. Now there's West Palm Beach, Florida, which is on the other side of the intercoastal, and is not as fantastically wealthy as Palm Beach. Palm Beach is an enclave like Malibu or something like that in California, like the Upper East Side of Fifth Avenue in New York, very Manhattan, very upscale, elite, close knit social community. That's in Florida, not too far away. And he either owned or had use of a mansion in Manhattan as well. So we have these issues with an island that is called Epstein Island, but it's actually part of the United States. And some women had complaints. Many of them hired lawyers. Now, they've been saying for all this time, probably getting advice from fraudulent lawyers like Gloria Allred, who are just political activists, telling them that they haven't had a chance to tell their story. Well, that's not true. Many of them hired lawyers. They filed lawsuits. The reasons we have Epstein files is that those are the lawsuits. There wouldn't be any Epstein files, with a few exceptions, other than the lawsuits filed in court 15 to 20 years ago and later by the women who, by all accounts, were probably used and manipulated and exploited by men, and now being used and exploited by political activists. So they're still being politically exploited, not in my view. So we have these lawsuits, and we have depositions of Jeffrey Epstein video. Where do you think those came from? Those came from the lawsuits that these girls filed. Now, here's one of the things I want you to understand. Let's say that they're, well, nobody knows, but that they're let's just pick a number, 500 girls, that's probably very high, and one of them gets a lawyer and files one lawsuit on behalf of one of these young women. That lawyer in our legal system has the power to depose all 500 of them. Now, at that number of quantity, the judge would have to give permission. But if one woman filed one lawsuit, that lawsuit has the power to investigate all of the women if they can figure out who they are, which they really cannot. But any woman who knows anything would have been contacted by the lawyer for the many women who filed lawsuits and investigated. The lawyer would have the power to subpoena documents of Epstein, of the flight logs, of anyone associated with it, anybody suspected. Discovery, the standards are very low. It's discovery in a lawsuit is called a fishing expedition as a derogatory slur, but it is. I mean, discovery is not part of a trial. It's a dragnet. It is designed to find out if there's something that I might want to know before I get ready to go to trial. So it is a dragnet. It is a fishing expedition. It is what the Wild West. Anything that could possibly lead to admissible evidence that could possibly be relevant is fair game. Now, there are objections that can be made. Someone who's a target of a lawsuit can say, well, the person involved is a minor, and I don't want that to be out there. There's someone can say I have private proprietary information. There are reasons why this is abusive. It's going too far. The person is harassing me because they already know the answers, and they're just using discovery to burden me when they don't need to. There's all kinds of categories of saying why discovery is not necessary or not appropriate. But presumptively, a lawyer who has a live lawsuit in a court can subpoena any documents anywhere he wants. Going into other jurisdictions is tricky, but I've done it. It can be done. And to talk to anybody he wants and subpoena anybody he wants. There are varying level of lack of cooperation, some of which are not proper, but pragmatically, a person can say, "Look, I'm not going to talk to you, and if you force me to come in, I'm not going to give you anything. I'm going to, there are practical reasons why a lawyer wants the cooperation of the people that he might want to talk to, but there's a gray scale there as far as those good concerns. Because of its power, like I say, usually there are a limit. Usually the documents that can be requested are unlimited, but they can be subject to a lot of objections. Say, look, this is outside the time period. This is abusive. This is, you're asking the same stuff. You've already got this stuff. Why, so they can go in and fight with the judge about this is too much, but there's technically no limit in most jurisdictions. And there are only usually interrogatories, which is you can ask a question that must be answered in writing under oath, not live, but in writing, but usually up to 30. One of the most forgotten methods is a request for admission. And those, depending on the jurisdiction, can be 10 to 30, presumptively. You can ask you can ask another party to admit something. It's really hard to do because if it's not worded perfectly, the target will squirm out of it. It's an art form to know how to ask for a request for admission and an interrogatory, because they're usually answered by the lawyers, not by the person, and they'll find a way to weasel out of whatever you ask. So you have to really nail it down. But in something important, and I think the allegations here would qualify, a judge could authorize more than the strict limit. So why do we have Epstein files? Because those are the lawsuits. Those are the lawsuit documents. That's what was discovered brought out in discovery, and we know about them. How do we know about Jeffrey Epstein? Because all this information was released 15 to 20 years ago, with the exception of certain issues put under seal to protect victims, unrelated people. Let's say that a person, Joe Schmo is engaged in having sex with an underage girl, which is technically statutory rape, and a pizza delivery man comes in and delivers a pizza. He would say, look, I have nothing to do with this. Don't, redact my name. And the court would probably say, yeah, okay, we'll keep the pizza delivery guy out of it. So there are some things that are not released because the court will say, that's unfair. That's not right. Um, I don't know. So let's say that Jeffrey Epstein passed out from too much whoopee, and the doctor came over to check on him. They could say, "Look, I'm just a doctor. Somebody just called me and said this guy passed out. I don't know anything about it, anything else." And the court may say, "Okay, presumptively, unless we learn something else, then we're not going to put in the name of the doctor, or that's going to be under seal." So there's a lot of things that are under seal. Courts have said no, you can't see them, and the Trump administration went in and talked and asked the courts to release the information, which would almost always mean that the court is going to go through it pretty much line by line and say, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, maybe, give me some briefing on this, maybe later. So when you ask the judge to release information, it's not a big box all at once. He's going to examine each item and each reason for keeping it confidential. The court said, no, we're not going to release it. The Trump administration just asked again. I would assume that with it, maybe you shouldn't assume anything, but typically a lawyer would try to come up with a better argument and a better presentation. They wouldn't give the exact same request because, actually the judge would be angry about that. So hopefully they've come up with a better set of reasons for releasing the information. But they're going to try again. And there's a lot of drama here because when the judge says no, then Trump's people could just say, look, we asked, and they said no. But it gets down to the nitty gritty. When there's a protective order or something is put under seal, it can be revisited when more information comes out. So the stuff that is not publicly released, that could change. A judge can change that. So anyway, that's where we're at. Is that the reason you know about Jeffrey Epstein is because many of the women sued, and there were lawsuits, and much of the information was made public. And so we had all this drumbeat by the political hacks saying release the files that were released 10, 15, 20 years ago. So release what's already been released because we think it's a nice grandstanding headline. Say, release the files. We did already. Oh, you already did? Well, release the files. Oh, but we already did release the files. So this is much of what's going on. Now, along these lines, the issue, of course, there's a Republican Senator Alan Simpson, quite a character from Wyoming. And he said a lot of, like Senator Kennedy does these days from Louisiana. He said a lot of interesting quips. And he said that there are two parties in America, the evil party and the stupid party. Now, he's a Republican. He says, I belong to the stupid party. And the way that Trump and his people have handled this is in public relations terms, absolutely horrific. I mean, if there were a prize for the worst public relations efforts ever, many of the things the Trump administration is doing would qualify for public relations hell. But as near as I can tell, now I'm going to go on a limb here from analyzing from what I've just been saying. Pam Bondi said, they're on my desk. What? What's on your desk? Well, she hasn't looked at them yet. So she screamed bloody murder, practically threatened to come up to New York and fire everybody and pull the files out. And then they came down with a truck and put them on her desk. Well, I really doubt they'd fit on a desk, but figuratively speaking, put them on her desk. And she said, okay, I've got them in my office. I've got them, quote, on my desk, so to speak. But she hadn't looked at them yet. So what does she have on her desk? Why did she say I've got them on my desk when she didn't know what it was? Well, apparently she did. So when she looked at them, she said, well, this has already been released. There's nothing new here. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I know for a fact that Pam Bondi and everybody else in the Trump administration has done a poor job of explaining themselves. So nobody knows what she meant. but it appears from what we know that what was dumped on Pam Bondi's desk was stuff that had already been released. And when she went through this, like, there's nothing here. It's all the same stuff. I think, I hope, maybe not. Maybe she's a liar. You know, maybe they all went burn bags. I don't know. But that's what it seems to be. Now, we're also told that there are all kinds of videos. Well, what Pam Bondi said, but she didn't say it well enough, is that they're videos that Jeffrey Epstein downloaded off the internet. They're not videos of Epstein. They're not videos of any of Epstein's friends or guests or whatever. They're videos that you can get off Pornhub. What are they? Pornhub was big in the news about Florida. I don't know, whatever names there are besides Pornhub, that there's, you know, you can go in there and just download thousands of videos. In some dark web things, you can download underage women, I guess. So they're saying, so she said, I am not releasing those. There's no way in hell I'm releasing video, you know, sexual videos of underage girls that Jeffrey Epstein got off the internet. Have nothing to do with this case. She didn't say it very well. She said it like, and then there was all kinds of noise. It got completely buried in the other topics. And she didn't, like, you know, come back and say, look, I told you that, you know, X, Y, Z. There are no videos of Epstein's house, island, or whatever. Is that true? That's what she was trying to say. I don't know. I mean, we have a photograph of Virginia Jeffrey. Strange coincidence, but her name is Giuffre. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's not related to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, of course, it's some French name. She has this photograph beaming with Prince Andrew. I mean, just absolute, not just happy, not just smiling, but like a lighthouse, you know, the sun coming out, because she's meeting an actual prince. I'm sure there are photographs. I'm sure there are videos, but are they, you know, but are there, I mean, who's not going to take a picture of the sunset on St. James Island, Epstein Island? But are they the kind that everybody imagines? Pam Bondi's attempt to communicate is that no, there aren't. Is that the truth? I don't know. But the idea that there are all these videos and Epstein videoed everybody, we have no evidence of that. That's just a bunch of rumors. Is it possible he did? Well, sure, it's possible. Was Jeffrey Epstein associated with an intelligence service of a foreign government? From what I know of the world, if you hear that Jeffrey Epstein was related to the Mossad or some other intelligence agency, I'll guarantee you one thing: he's not. If you heard that somebody is connected to the intelligence services undercover, you'd never know about it. They would never let you find out about it. So no, I mean, if somebody thinks like, oh, Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad, well, if he was Mossad, then he wasn't Mossad, because they would never tell you. They would never allow the slightest evidence to persist of that kind of thing. So I just assume that was he a part of an intelligence apparatus? Could be. Will you ever know about it? No. Will I ever know about it? No. Is there any evidence? I'm sure the evidence was scrubbed within 24 hours, if any of that was true. That's just, you know, I'm not telling you the truth, what the facts are. I'm not telling you what the law is. I'm just saying that's a pretty fair reading of the world, the way things are going on. So when people tell you, oh, he was an intelligence agency, well, how could you possibly know that? Because if he was part of an intelligence agency, they're a pretty shoddy intelligence agency. You know, any intelligence agency that would leave any evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was a part of them is nothing to worry about. They're so sloppy and shoddy and schlocky that they're, they're worthless. But anyway, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible that he has all kinds of videos of men having sex with young women? Yes, it's possible. Do we know it? No, we don't. Everybody thinks it. Everybody is a oh, who's the author of James Bond? Damn it. Everybody thinks they're a James Bond author. We have wild imaginations. What we don't have is evidence. Now everyone says, well, I want the list. What list? Do you think a criminal is going to make a list? Seriously. I mean, I tell you, I take it back a little bit. Police and investigators, they'll tell you, you would not believe the stupid things the criminals do. They'll come in and they'll find something and they'll go like, he did what? Yep, he did. So, I mean, is it possible that criminals can be that stupid? Yeah, there are criminals who are that stupid, but I'm pretty sure that criminals generally don't keep lists of their crimes. And so the idea that there's an Epstein list, there's no evidence of that, and there's no common sense in that. Is it possible? I guess, but I mean, the thing is, I guess about the only thing you could have is wire transfers to Epstein. Although I don't think anybody at that level of wealth and influence and sophistication is going to send a wire transfer. I think they'd find a way to pay off a blackmail extortion thing without leaving fingerprints. But again, there are criminals who do stupid things. They do. So there could be financial records of wire transfers. But basically, the idea that, release the list. What makes you think there's a list? Maybe you're right. Maybe there is a list. Maybe he's a completely narcissistic psychopath. I mean, maybe he's that stupid. He was dead now. But assuming that there's a list of Epstein's clients, of those who abused women, that's a pretty big stretch. If they come out with a list, I'm like, oh, well, gosh darn. But it's still a pretty big reach to think that criminals keep lists, especially of something like this. Now I noticed that handwritten notes came out from Virginia, whatever it is, whatever her name, however you pronounce her last name. Where she made lists of girls, and it was without a context. It mentioned that some of them were massage, masseurs, and some of them were, there were notations of specific cities they went to or things like that. Sounded to me like, again, I'm going way on a limb. These are not facts. This is just a guess. It just seemed to me like she was copying them out of somebody's phone. But that's just a list of the girls who participated. I would imagine that they've all been contacted. If they haven't been contacted to see what they know, they should fire everybody at the FBI and start from scratch. But anyway, so the idea that there's going to be a list is just, I mean, stranger things have happened. But I don't know why people should be so adamant that there's going to be a list. Now, let's talk about some other things. Why won't anyone let these girls talk? There was a trial in 2014. There was a federal trial of Jeffrey Epstein in 2014. He was convicted. Now he got away. His sentence was kind of ridiculously small, but there was a trial. Any of these girls, if they wanted to testify, they say, Mr. Bailiff, please, I'd like to come in and testify. And so why won't anybody listen to them after everybody's listened to them? It's like we've heard about the Epstein thing for 20 years. Why is everybody covering it up? except for the 20 years that we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. We've had all this discovery. We've had all this news coverage. Virginia and other people were on, big news programs 10, 15 years ago. And so they come out there and see, this is why I'm not going to blame the girls. I mean, Washington is a town that exploits people. Political exploitation in the Washington, D.C. area is just about as bad as sexual exploitation. It's sick. And there are feminist, money-grubbing lawyers who are just like all the other money-grubbing lawyers, will do anything for a buck and anything to get their get TV time. And so they put on all these press conferences where they demand to have the information released. And they demand, like, why can't, we want justice. Many of them sued. Many of them were paid. Many of them have cashed the checks from the lawsuits. Were they big enough? Probably not. Is our legal system in good shape? No. Do we need to reform our legal system? Yes. But they did sue, and they did get settlements, and they got checks, and they cashed them. Did everybody uniformly? No. Is that right? No, it's not. It's not fair. But to say, it's like, why won't anybody listen to us when all we have to do is listen to them over and over and over and over again? That's a red flag to me. You could say, well, John, you're being insensitive. No. I'm sensing I'm sensing something's rotten in Denmark here. When people get up there flanked by well-known political hacks who would just as soon exploit these women as a man would exploit them in bed, and have a proven record of it, and they're going around, giving these scripts. It's like we want to be heard after we've been heard 1,000 times. They're at a press conference. Okay, get this. They're at a press conference with the Capitol behind them. Say, we want to be heard. You're being heard at that very second. The media is all there. The Capitol is behind you. You're on stage. You're being heard. So how could these women be saying, we want to be heard? Because that's the script that these hack lawyers wrote for them. They're being exploited by the lawyers just as much as they were exploited by the men. Depends case by case basis. And so they're saying, we want justice. They got money. Jeffrey Epstein was convicted. Under Trump, he was arrested again. He was awaiting trial when he died somehow. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and no, she's not in some luxury prison. There are none of those. She's not a maximum security. She's not a hardened terrorist. They took her out of a maximum security prison, but there is no such thing as a luxury jail. They don't exist. The U.S. government does not build or maintain, I can't think of the word they're using, but, some kind of soft prison. Nobody builds prisons like what they're talking about. Nobody builds a swimming pool. Nobody builds a jail with a swimming pool or any other nonsense. They just simply don't exist in the universe. And she's not in one. And so she's in jail. And Prince Andrew is not in jail, but, they have a different legal system. Their legal system is the royalty owns the country. I mean, it's sovereign immunity. The sovereign is the owner of the country. So you can't put the king or the prince in jail. It's just not part of it. It's just not the way their system works. It goes back to the Norman invasion 1,000 years ago. So Prince Andrew has been stripped of his title. He is biologically the prince, but he's been stripped of everything. Um, and I think that might be a bit excessive. Again, when you see Virginia Giuffre, whatever, with his arm around her, she is beaming like the sun. She is like a sunrise. Here is a prince, and I'm here with a prince. She does not look abused. She is extremely happy. She is 1,000 times beyond happy in that photograph. And he's been punished. He's radioactive. He's been stripped of everything. He's been, again, within the limits of their legal system, he has been torn down as much as one can be torn down. And so am I against that? No, not necessarily. We like to see the facts, but when somebody says we want justice, I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right here. When Epstein is dead on his second conviction, they say, well, we demand justice. Well, what do you think a conviction in federal court is? What do you want? What do you want? You want him to be eaten by ants? Tie him down, cover him with honey, and have the ants eat him? That's just not in our legal system. I mean, someone might very well say, yes, I want that. Okay, but our legal system the Eighth Amendment doesn't allow that. So there are alarm bells going off here that, like, okay, we're standing here talking in front of the Capitol about how nobody will listen to us. They're listening to you while you're saying nobody's listening to us. And they're saying that someone should release the names. Okay, here's what I want to get into the legal system and why I spent so much time on the lawsuits. The theory is, the claim is that Jeffrey Epstein ordered for himself, and we imagine, pure imagination, we imagine that he did it for other people, for other guys. He arranged massages. He started out with professional masseuses in massage companies. There were like 25. And according to Maxwell, he kind of got lower and lower in age, and less and less professionally connected as official massage professionals. And so he arranged massages for himself and for other men. And then he got, as is kind of, I don't know how to put it, there are legitimate licensed professional massages. Some of them are in sports, dance, ballet, physical therapy, everything you can imagine. But it has a reputation for, let's say, après massage, after the massage. And so this apparently went on, is that it went well beyond a massage and became sexual. And that means that in almost every case, not necessarily, you have one woman and one man, maybe two, in a private room. So why would there be a list? If the woman who was in the room, naked, having physical contact with an older man, if that woman can't tell us, who can? Who are you going to ask? Release all the victims. Well, unless the victims come forward and say, "Hi, I'm a victim," and some of them have, and probably more will. But how is somebody else going to know, other than the woman who is in the private room? If they're going to say, "Well, who exploited them?" I don't like the word abuse, because I think abuse to me suggests violence. It's not, having sex is a natural phenomenon. Underage, it's illegal, and in certain Coercive situations, it's illegal and very, also very wrong. But abuse to me is a different word. That's just me. But so let's say exploitation. So if the men exploited these young women, who's going to know except the woman? Who would we go to? So we're standing in front of the Capitol saying, we want to know all the perpetrators. All right, how? You're standing right here in front of the Capitol. Tell us. Tell us who the perpetrators were. I mean, don't ask us to tell you. Now you can say, well, they maybe never got the full name. It's true. If they were asked to, to go in and help a guy out with the massage and it went way, way, way too far, you could say, well, they don't know the whole name. Okay, fine. But if I'm one of the lawyers and one of the students, I'd have photographs and I'd say, did you see this guy? Have you seen? Because I'd look at the phone logs, I'd look at the airplane logs, look at credit cards in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I'd say, have you ever seen this guy before? No. How about this guy? Have you ever seen him before? No. Have you ever seen this guy before? Oh yeah, he had sex with me as I was a minor. Okay. Well, this guy is Joe Schmo, and he lives at 123 Main Street. So yeah, it's quite possible that the women don't know the full name, but nobody else would know, and it would be possible for a decent, qualified lawyer. There aren't very many of those, but it would be decent for it would be possible to figure out who they were. Just ask them. You wouldn't have enough evidence to pull anybody in for an actual lineup, but you could do a photographic lineup. So as we go along, and then the other thing is, of course, what bothers people a great deal is that there are 32 states in our country where the age of consent is 16 or older. And of course, if you read things online, be careful. There are different kinds of ages of consent. There's consent to marriage. There's alcoholic drinking. There's joining the military. There's being allowed to have a job. So be careful in what you're reading. But apparently, there's different stories that the age of consent in England is 17, and Virginia was 17 when she met Prince Andrew. Other people say she was 16, but we don't know. It's difficult. Now, for the Epstein, well, he's dead, but for the whole enterprise, this is somewhat difficult because for anyone who participated in this, because the age in Florida is 18. The age of sexual consent is 18, and although the U.S. Virgin Islands is a separate territory, very near Florida, it also has an age of consent of 18. So anybody under, okay, well, I'm seeing United Kingdom is 16, like the 32 states. Anyway, so but ironically, the two places where this seems to happen the most are the worst for the perpetrators, in terms of if it's illegal, if it's under 18. So anyone who did in fact have consensual sex with with these young women, and I'm saying young women because people are talking like they're 10. I've seen nothing to substantiate that. Could it be? Could be. We'll find out. But we're talking about the age at which young people in our country typically have their first sex. 15, 16, 17 is, you could be offended by this, you could be upset, you could make you sick to your stomach, but it's a fact. That's what's going on in our society. Is it illegal? Yes. Does the close in age exception work? No. The exception or the grace period for two people who are closely at the same age? No. Oh, I just noticed when I looked here that there's age of consent. Shoot, I just saw it again. There's age of consent to marry. Um, oh, some have an age of consent just for dating. But so when you see age of consent, read carefully to what it means. So anyway, if are these if there are perpetrators, not just rumors, if there are a number of them, then they all broke the law. Is it illegal to arrange? Uh, Let me back up. It's kind of like maybe the middle. Not so much the hysterical commentary about this thing, and not the most apologetic, but somewhere in the middle. One could say that Epstein and his people ran a brothel. I think is about the legal terminology. Is that it would sound as if the facts bear it out that they operated a brothel with underage girls. Is it legal to have sex with underage girls? No, especially not in U.S. Virgin Islands or Florida, where it's 18. And Florida has like 21, if they haven't changed it, 21 for alcohol. I mean, Florida has always been a little bit overly age of legal drinking. I think it's still 21. So anyway, so did they break the law by having sex? Yes. Is it legal to operate a brothel? No. Edit for any age. Is it legal to operate a brothel for underage girls or boys? No, absolutely not. Hell no. Is it, there is something called the Mann Act, MANN, has nothing to do with males. It's just the guy's name. The Mann Act makes it illegal to transport women across state lines for the purpose of prostitution at any age. And that's illegal. That's a federal crime. Yeah, for still 21, and for just to have a drink of alcohol. So Florida and U.S. Virgin Islands are bad news for Epstein and anybody he arranges for. So you can't, and as far as it seems to me, there's a lot of hysterical rumors which don't seem to have a lot of, I don't really trust the runaway train. But so far, there doesn't seem to be anything non-consensual, except that in the law, underage consent is not consent. That's lawyer talk. That's crazy. But for a woman or a boy, for a girl or a boy, to consent to sex when they're not old enough is not consent. But really, it's willing. If there was violence, if there was force, if there was rape, I mean, not statutory rape, but actual rape, as opposed, what we consider to be forcible, then that's extremely serious. And yeah, some of those guys should go to if that happened, some of these guys should go to jail for the rest of their lives. And some of the sentiment I agree, but the problem is that we have sentiment and conclusions and opinions that are way ahead of the facts. We just don't. People are just imagining what the facts might be, and then coming to conclusions. If there was anything like Sean Diddy, I didn't understand half that stuff they're talking about because parties that go on for days. I mean, but implied but clear, not explicit, but pretty much undeniable. The allegations were of force. The women were forced or drugged to have sex, coerced. That's at another level. I don't know if it's true. He was found not guilty. But if it's anything, everybody's assuming that it's just another example of that. We don't know that. We might. We might find that out. But the last thing I'm going to say about this is that people are going to say, well, we're worried that the Trump administration is going to alter the records. And is that a reasonable question? Sure. It's not an answer, it's a question. But if there were anything truly radioactive, is there the possibility that the smoking gun documents have disappeared? Of course. Anytime on anything you'd wonder about that. Except that Barack Obama had these files from 2008 to 2012 during his 8 years. Biden had them for 4 years. So if there was anything in there that's now missing, the Obama administration would know it. The Biden administration would know it. They would probably have copies. So could it happen? Well, no, it couldn't happen because these files have been around for 15 to 20 years. And so, so the thing is, and to even get into that makes people have to recognize, like, these are not new files, right? These are really old files. So it's like, well, someone may have deleted some of the files. Oh, you admit they've been around for a long time then, right? These are files that are really, really old. Now the only thing is we did get a data dump from Epstein's estate. First, I should probably point out that estate is kind of a generic word. If a couple dies owning one trailer and having $10,000 in the bank, the law calls that their estate. It doesn't mean a mansion. It doesn't mean a museum. It just means that whatever's left over after they die is administered by an executor or appointed executor or something like that. So estate does not necessarily mean anything glamorous or elaborate or anything like that. But Epstein's estate, I believe they were subpoenaed. They handed over to Congress a bunch of records. There are some emails that maybe the government didn't have before that. There may be some apparently there are. It's pretty clear that the FBI, like 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, did an absolutely horrific job of searching some records. The way they wrote the subpoena, the way they followed up, the way they interviewed, there is a pretty strong case that they missed a whole bunch of stuff when they forcibly went in and tried to subpoena the records, to seize records. There could very well be records that they should have grabbed, but they didn't. But unfortunately, we're not going to see those now. Anyway, this is legal discussions. What the facts turn out to be, what the politics turn out to be, how these things play out, how people lie through their, whatever, about what the documents actually say, and all that discussion. Those are all different topics, but I think these are topics that need to be guiding our discussions. So thank you. This is John Mosley in retirement. Thank you.